You're listening to the JD Rucker Show. Let's begin. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the JD Rucker Show, the evening edition. We are super excited. You know, I did a show this morning, and it was good. It was a good show. There was a lot of good stuff there, but we didn't have nearly as many viewers. I'm going to keep doing it, though. I have to, because, look, there's so much to cover. I don't want to necessarily do like a 3-hour evening show that will really make some people annoyed, because, you know, you can only take so much Rucker at a time, right? So we are going to continue to do this 2 shows a day as much as possible. I can't guarantee that it'll be every day, but most days we will. But with that said, because a couple of the segments were important, I am going to go ahead and replay them. Not right now, but we'll get into some fresh stuff now, because there's a lot of fresh stuff going on right now. Super exciting stuff. But we are going to replay just a couple of the segments from this morning, because I do want them to get out to as many people as possible. Especially on, I forgot which platform, maybe it was Getter, or might have been X, where it's like nobody was watching. Very, very disheartening. Nah, not really. I would do this show if one person watched. Seriously, that's how much I love doing these shows. That's how much I love y'all for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you. Make sure that hit the subscribe button if you're new, or even if you're old and you still haven't subscribed for whatever reason. And be sure to hit the thumbs up button, because it does help me and us and the world. But more importantly, it helps the United States of America. So if you are a true patriot, then you will give me a thumbs up right now. Go ahead. I'll wait. Thank you. I saw it. I saw you do it. And if you didn't do it, I saw you not do it as well. I'm watching. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to replay a couple of those. I don't want to do this every time. As a matter of fact, I don't want to do this ever again. But these 2, one I'm ranting about NATO, the other one I'm ranting about something else, which you'll see. And those were important rants that I want people to watch. So if you did watch this morning's show, there's going to be, 15, 20 minutes probably of repeat, but otherwise everything else should be fresh and new. We've got a lot of fresh new stuff. President Trump didn't announce it yet, but at least it was leaked, and I think it was a positive leak. I don't think this was like, oh, there's leakers in the White House again, just like there were in 2017. No, I think this time it was leaked intentionally to sort of stir the pot a bit. Sometimes whenever the government intentionally leaks anything, it's usually for basically a trial balloon, right? It's just, before we make the official announcement, let's go ahead and ease it out there. Get a leak. Somebody leaks and says, hey, this is happening. And then whatever, legacy media picks it up and everybody else starts talking about it a little bit, just to see, what is the sentiment? What are the arguments against it? And then the White House will come out with an official statement. That's a relatively common practice. And I would say this is probably that case, because we are almost officially ending aid, at least on a temporary basis, to Ukraine. So praise God for that. We also had a big firing today. I guess the firing happened on Friday, but the resignation letter came today from the New York field office that has been responsible for the suppression of the Jeffrey Epstein files. That guy's gone. James Dennehy, I believe is his name. He's gone. We've had that nice bit of news. There's a lot of news that I'm not going to cover. People were asking today for me to go into more detail about, what happened with the Oscars. I can't. I really didn't watch them. I know I was making fun of people say, oh, a lot of people will say they didn't watch them, but they actually did. I promise you, I didn't watch the Oscars. I haven't watched the Oscars in a decade, okay? I wasn't watching the Oscars before it was cool to not watch the Oscars, okay? I mean, what's the point? They're not entertaining. They're infuriating in many ways, and I don't care about celebrities at all. Okay, the only time I ever care about a celebrity is when they do something really good or really bad for the nation. Really good, I can't think of the last time, but really bad, you see that all the time, such as the celebrities that were allegedly paid by USAID to go pretend to love on Vladimir Zelensky. What was that, two years ago, a year ago, however long ago? I think it's spread out over time. That's something that I would cover. I'm not going to cover who won Best Actor, whatever, or Best Documentary, or Best anything. I don't pay attention. Sorry. There are other shows where I'm sure you can get plenty of that information. Let's see what's happening over at the Liberty Daily right now. As a matter of fact, got a couple stories that I'm definitely going to be covering. We'll see how those go. I want to play this parody video. I really do, because it really is funny, but it's not fully for a family-friendly audience. So I'll pass. But if you get a chance, look up Mr. Reagan's parody of the Zelensky-Trump meeting in the Oval Office, and it will make you LOL. Yeah, it was good. It was good stuff. Let's see what else is happening. Slick Willie talking about trusting Putin in 2013. Casey Anthony. Nah. We have to, and it's just part of what we do at thelibertydaily.com, as well as americafirstreport.com and discernreport.com. We have to put out pretty much all the news, right? Even if it's not necessarily news that we want to put out. There was a nice article today. This is one that I wanted to put out, and I actually want to read, because I didn't get a chance to read it yet, but this came from MikeHuckabee.com. Is this the real reason the Big Mike wasn't chosen as Joe Biden's replacement? I can't wait to read that one. You can find that over at thelibertydaily.com. Former JP Morgan executive and Barclays CEO Jess Staley fights UK's financial watchdog over his lies about his connections to Jeffrey Epstein. That's probably pretty interesting as well. We talk about the politicians. We talk about, the British royal family and Bill Clinton and all these Hollywood celebrities, but there are actually a whole lot of, very likely, there's a lot of businessmen, people that we probably haven't heard of, CEOs, VPs, whatever, who are also implicated in the Epstein files, the Epstein list. They went down, paid big money, went down to Epstein Island, did their nasty little things, and then Epstein got them on tape, and now he can go get a loan at JP Morgan or whatever. That's just, it's almost certainly the case. There was one story I did want to bring up. Let me see if I could find it. I forgot to put it on my show notes. Darn it. Messed that one up. Let's see. I don't remember what it was either, so that doesn't help. It was, right. Okay, yeah. And I can't show this on the screen, unfortunately, but I'm going to, because it's from the Epoch Times, and the browser, I can't log in. For whatever reason, I can only log in under one browser. And so I can't log in, so they have it behind the paywall. But it's titled, U.S. Welcomes Europe, Taking the Lead on Regional Security. And that's according to National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. He said Monday that the United States welcomes Europe's increased role in its own security following British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's statement that Europe is ready to take the lead on security guarantees for Ukraine after a potential peace agreement with Russia. The reason I want to bring that up is because I think, my guess is that this is an attempt by not just Starmer, but also Emmanuel Macron and others in Europe to sort of shame President Trump into getting involved in Ukraine. And it's like, no, you guys do that. You please, this is what we want. Ukraine is your neighbor, not ours. Okay. Russia is your neighbor, not ours. So of course you should be taking a much bigger role, in the lion's share of the role of defending your own continent. We're not sitting there saying, oh, please, Europe, please help us fight the cartels. We need your help. No, we want to fight the cartels. We want to take them out. They're our responsibility, even though they're in Mexico. As long as we can work with the Mexican government to take them out, then let's do that. Okay, we do need to work with one country only because it's the source country. Okay, they're all coming through Mexico. Most of them are coming through Mexico, so we have to work with the Mexican government. Otherwise, we're not asking anybody else to participate in taking out our biggest problem with the cartels, because that's what big boy nations do. We don't need other people to take care of our problems. Europe for too long has relied on the United States to fend off against any aggressions from Russia or anybody else, and that's just not right. Okay? It's just, take responsibility. And if it's too much, great, call us. We may or may not help. Okay? We'll take it situationally, but don't assume that we're just going to be right there. Okay? We already bailed you out in 2 world wars. Now you want to start a 3rd world war. I'm not interested in that. You can understand. We got a good show for you today, though. One that, like I said, we are going to play a couple of clips later on in the show from this morning, but otherwise, this will hopefully be the last time I have to do that. I really am hopeful that we can just have 2 standalone shows, one every night at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, okay, and wherever you are in between your time zone. So we want to do that every night, and we want to find an appropriate time to have our daytime show, maybe 8 a.m., 9 a.m., noon, sometime around there. Probably not later than noon, I wouldn't suspect, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We're playing with different times right now. This morning's time zone or time pick, I don't even remember what time we picked, but it wasn't hugely successful, so we're going to try a different time tomorrow. And as a result of it not being hugely successful, I'm going to play 2 clips. That's it, just 2 clips. We'll get to those later. Let's go ahead and get a quick word from one of our sponsors, and then we'll go straight into the stories of the day. Last year, my long-term storage food company, Prepper Farms, was partnered with and actually owned by another corporation. I know that nobody knew this. Very few people were even aware that this was the case, because our production, our systems, everything was in place and working just as it should be. People would go, they would put in promo code JDR at prepperfarms.com. They would receive the maximum possible discount, as always, and then they would get their long-term storage beef. What you didn't know and what we can now explain now is that this year, in 2025, we have gone back to the original ownership structure, and I'm very excited about that, because that puts me finally back more in charge, and I am super excited about that concept, not because I crave power by any means, but because I feel that as an America First veteran-owned company, that we need to focus on helping Americans to prepare for whatever is to come, whether it's natural disasters or emergencies or de-dollarization, food crises, bird flu, whatever it is. We do expect something to happen, which is why we built prepperfarms.com in the first place. The idea here is to get high-quality, all-American, all-Texas beef, the good stuff, ribeye, New York strip, tenderloin, all of that good stuff, and freeze dry it naturally to give it a 25-year shelf life. We don't add any preservatives. There's only one ingredient, and that's beef. Lasts 25 years in the bag, and that's awesome. So support this show, support me, support yourself and your family. Protect yourself for the future by stocking up on long-term storage, high-quality beef. Go to prepperfarms.com. That's prepperfarms.com. Use promo code JDR, and you will receive the maximum possible discount. All right, it's time for some real talk, some real analysis of what's actually happening right now between the United States and pretty much everybody else. Okay, let's call it what it is. It's the U.S. versus the world, not in some military fashion. I'm talking about diplomatically. Does that mean aren't people out there who are sympathetic to our goals, our desires? No, of course not. There are some who understand, but they're not going to go against the world order. They're not going to go against, for example, Europe and their push to try to get us as involved in the Ukrainian-Russian war as possible. They want us to lead the fight. They want this to be the big boys, Russia versus the United States. No longer do they want it to be Ukraine or any of their boys. They want our boys and girls dying overseas. They want to see World War III happen. They're trying everything they can. Oh, they can taste it. They know it's close. They're right there. Now we might say, oh, don't worry. Nothing to worry about here. Trump would never allow that. Except here's the thing. And we are starting to see a lot of division, further division, even here in the United States of America. The reality is, if Europe wanted to, and specifically the United Kingdom and France leading the way, if they really, really wanted to, and I think they do, they could goad us into war with Russia. All they have to do is, as NATO members, all they have to do is prompt Russia to attack. And it could happen in the form of putting boots on the ground, British soldiers, French soldiers on the ground in Ukraine, get them attacked, and all of a sudden there's war, and they would initiate their NATO bells, NATO sirens ring, and say, "Oh, NATO member attacked. Time to call in the reinforcements. Time to get American boys and girls over here to fight this war." That is their intention. I do believe that. I think that following the ambush, because that's really what it was, the ambush by Vladimir Zelensky and his cronies over at in Legacy Media, as well as European leaders, they intended for this to happen exactly the way it's happening. Now, I should take that back. They didn't think it was going to go that far. They didn't think that Zelensky was going to get booted so quickly. Whether or not they really wanted him to sign the deal, we don't know. I've heard rumors. There are several reports out there that say that, at least for the Democrats, they were pushing for Zelensky to not sign the deal, no matter what. The only way that he would sign is if President Trump would sign security guarantees. In other words, putting U.S. troops in Ukraine to act as human shields so that once Russia attacked and took out an American soldier, then that would be the start of World War III. They said that was the only thing that would allow them to encourage Vladimir Zelensky to sign the deal. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, and we'll never know for sure. I think it's probably true. I mean, it sure seems to fit the narrative and fit their agenda. What about the other world leaders? Were they saying the same thing? I'd say they probably were as well. I think we're being set up here. I think that President Trump has subverted their intentions at least a little bit, but now they're on to Plan B, and Plan B is, okay, if we can't get the U.S. to put their troops in harm's way based upon the signature and enticement of rare earth minerals, then we're going to force it through our NATO alliance. Zelensky basically said as much over the weekend. Keir Starmer also basically said as much over the weekend as well. And now the French, Macron, is saying pretty much the same thing. This is, again, one big setup. Now, can they outmaneuver Trump? I don't think so. I'm actually, the question isn't whether or not they can outmaneuver him. The question is, can they lay a trap where it makes it pretty much unavoidable? And that's possible. That part is definitely possible because, again, we are a member of NATO, and there's not a whole lot that we could do if Russia does attack a NATO nation. You know, we could just say, no, never mind, but that wouldn't go over very well at all. The world would turn against the United States of America far more than they already have. And here at home, we would have idiots such as Lizzo. Idiots such as Lizzo out there saying that President Trump is starting World War III by trying to avoid World War III. That's, of course, their logic, but they're allowed to have that perspective, even if it's idiotic and very much wrong. But according to this article over at Breitbart, left-wing pop star and former Kamala Harris campaign surrogate Lizzo says the left's warnings about President Donald Trump starting World War III have been vindicated by Elon Musk saying the U.S. should withdraw from the United Nations and NATO. She said, or she posted on Sunday. She said, when we said Trump would start World War III, they said we were being dramatic. Elon Musk supports U.S. withdrawal from NATO and the United Nations is the headline that she posted over at Blue Sky and all of her 14 followers over there. The headline Lizzo shared was from a Newsweek article reporting that Musk has supported a call for the U.S. to withdraw from the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the United Nations. The article cited a Saturday night post from ex-user Gunter Eagleman, which read, "It's time to leave NATO and the UN," to which Musk replied, "I agree." And I covered that story over the weekend as well as this morning. Point being is that he's right. You know, we really do need to divorce ourselves from from NATO. We need to divorce ourselves from the UN as well. That's a separate issue, to be clear. That has nothing to do Ukraine. No Ukraine. We need out of the UN as well. But that's something we can put that on hold. Okay, NATO is a pressing issue, and we must act very quickly. And I'm praying that on tomorrow, Tuesday's address to Congress and address to the nation, that President Trump announces that he's initiating plans to withdraw the United States from NATO. I know chances are slim, but it's not impossible, and we have been surprised. I think all of us have been surprised by 1 or 2 or 10 things that President Trump has done ever since Inauguration Day. Hopefully this will be another pleasant surprise. Hopefully we will hear the good news tomorrow, and of course that would create an absolute tsunami of negative press from legacy media, plus I would say almost an equal tsunami of positive press from independent, conservative, and we'll call it fringe or alternative media. We're going to be supportive of it. Legacy media is going to be against it. The question is, what will the people think? Now, to be clear, change is bad in the eyes of most Americans, even if it's a positive change. People don't like letting go of things from the past, and that's why, at least initially, if we do leave NATO, it will be viewed negatively by a majority of Americans. This is why it's so important for us, our role, yours and mine, to educate and inform people. We should really start now, because I would like to assume that the good news is coming, whether it's coming Tuesday night or next week or next month or some point in the future, Lord willing, before Europe is able to initiate and get themselves stuck into a war with Russia that would force us in. Hopefully before that happens, we can extricate ourselves from NATO. But regardless of when it happens, it's going to be viewed negatively, at least in the beginning. It will be our responsibility to educate our friends and everybody. And here's just a quick bit of help information. You know, the original purpose of NATO when it was built 8 decades ago, it was to stop the spread of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union no longer exists, therefore there really is no need for NATO. But even those who say, well, but Russia still exists and Russia is expanding into Ukraine, that's why we need NATO, I would argue it's the other way around. I would argue that if there was no NATO, then Russia would not be invading Ukraine right now. That's hard for a lot of people to grasp, but the expansion of NATO, eastward expansion of NATO, which we promised, hey, when the Soviet Union broke up, you know, Clinton was promising, hey, we won't go any further, we won't go to the east. You know, you have my word on that. And then what do we start doing? We immediately started going to the east. We immediately started creeping closer and closer and closer to Moscow. Ukraine would be NATO's crown jewel. Both sides know that. That's why Russia has been very vehemently opposed, even as they've allowed other nations to join NATO, despite promises by NATO and by the United States to not do that. They haven't really thrown much of a Russia has not been too opposed to it, but Ukraine that's a red line. That is absolutely positively they would not allow that. And to be fair, neither would NATO, at least before. But we made the mistake, or maybe it was the intention. Maybe there was no mistake. Maybe it's happening exactly like Joe Biden, the Biden-Harris regime, and the globalist elite cabal and their puppets in NATO. Maybe they planned on this Russian invasion. And that's why they told Zelensky before the invasion. They told him, he acknowledged this on CNN years ago. He said, look, they told me that we were not getting into NATO. But they said that I shouldn't say anything, that we should leave it on the table and pretend like it's possible for Ukraine to get into NATO. That way, Russia won't invade. In other words, he was suckered. They knew that if NATO membership was off the table with Ukraine, the chances were pretty rock solid that Russia wasn't going to invade. But they convinced idiot Zelensky that, hey, pretend like you might get into NATO, and that's why Russia won't invade. Okay, he was conned. He was a useful idiot, and he remains a useful idiot for them. He thinks that he's in charge, but he's not. And I shouldn't say that. I don't know if he realizes or not that he is a puppet. Okay, he might be a very happy puppet, a very rich puppet, a very pleased puppet. Doesn't mind. Just tell me where to go, what to do, what to say. The people will love me. I'll get all the attention I want, and as a narcissist, that feeds my whatever. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. I don't know for sure. I do know this, that we need to divorce ourselves from NATO. Period. And doing so would mean, essentially, since we're using these analogies, it would be basically a trial separation from Europe. And that would be of grave concern to some people. But I think that it would be short-lived. I think that over time, we would be able to rebuild those relationships. And I hate to say it. I hate to be that guy, but I will go ahead and be that guy. I really don't care if we don't rebuild our relationship with Europe. It's probably a bad move. Okay, I'm probably wrong about this one, but I don't care. Nothing against Europe. Okay, I got friends in Europe. So, I've heard good things about Europe. I've heard bad things about Europe, but frankly, I don't care. They need us, we need them, but maybe we don't, and maybe they don't. We'll see. Or we probably won't see, but I would love for us to see. But that is one of the side effects that would happen from us leaving NATO, is that it would have a cooling effect, like I said, the equivalent of a trial separation from the European Union. They would almost certainly form their own army almost immediately to counter the Russian threat, though, I mean, nobody's talking about this. No, actually, I take that back. Glenn Beck has talked about it. Glenn Beck talked about it. The fact that since we are in year 3 of this war, what does that say about Russia and their military? Are they really that scary? It's like, if they can break through Ukraine, then they're going to spread across all of Europe. That's the fear mongering that's being done. Really? I mean, would that, if it took them over 3 years to break Ukraine, then I guess the rest of Europe, it'll take them 300 years? Even parts of Europe? I mean, sorry, Vlad. Sorry, Mr. Putin. You sort of kind of cringe a little bit how much trouble you've had just getting little bits of territory. It's like, yeah, Russia's winning. Okay. But, again, it's sort of like, it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. I'm not scared of Russia. People say, oh, but they've got nukes. Okay, well, they also had what was supposed to be a really strong army. And I'm not seeing it. Okay. Just not seeing it. So maybe the nuclear threat itself isn't that big of a deal either. And perhaps, just perhaps, they, because of their lack of military prowess, and maybe they wouldn't want to even risk getting into nuclear war either. I'm just saying. I'm not saying. Not saying. I'm just saying. So that's where we stand. We need to leave NATO ASAP. There's going to be pain from it. But here's what happens if we don't. If we don't leave NATO, I would suspect that our allegiance, our commitment to NATO will end up getting us involved in a war with Russia. And that will very quickly escalate into World War III. So to those people that say, you know what, maybe can't we just get peace and not leave NATO? I don't think that's possible. I think that, and I shouldn't say it's not possible. I don't think that the powers that be, the globalist elite cabal, the powers and principalities, the people like Keir Starmer or Emmanuel Macron or I forgot the new dude in Germany. I think that they are itching for World War III to start. They're trying to use Zelensky. They would have been able to get him to push Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or whoever into war, but since that didn't work out, they're trying to con, use Zelensky and CNN and everybody else to play the art of the deal against the guy that wrote the art of the deal, try to get him suckered into World War III. And by the way, the reason, just a quick side note, the reason that I'm so certain that NATO wants World War III is because of the way that Mark Rutte, the new head of NATO, he has been just absolutely loving on President Trump. I mean, he's been like, oh, it really is Europe's fault. Europe really needs to step up. America has done so much. America is such an important part of NATO. America, America, America. He hates President Trump, to be clear, but you never know it. I mean, that you would think that he's. It's not that he thinks that Trump's a friend. You think that he was like a fanboy. I mean, he just gushes over Trump nonstop since the election. Okay? Since the election, he's been gushing over Trump on day one. Okay? Day one following the election, Mark Rutte was just like, oh, Trump. Oh, Trump. He hates President Trump, to be clear. Okay? He doesn't like him. He doesn't admire him. He's trying to use him. He's trying to play him. This is why he's trying to rein in, to some extent, at least the rhetoric coming from other NATO nations, the rhetoric coming from members of the European Union who are in NATO, and even members not in the European Union, but who are in NATO. He's trying to rein them in and say, guys, we got to be cool to Trump. We got to be nice to Trump. That's what he's doing. And that's sad, but it's reality. And we have to ask ourselves why. And I would say the reason why is because he knows that the only way that their plans, the globalist elite cabal, could be thwarted from their current trajectory is if the United States of America were to leave NATO. Therefore, I would strongly urge President Trump to do just that. It is time, finally, for us to leave NATO. Period. There's a rush, a gold rush, going on right now, not just by central banks, not just by entire countries, not just by those trying to refill Fort Knox before Elon Musk and President Trump get there. No, there's a gold rush happening amongst individual Americans. It's a gold and silver rush, and it's specifically attracting people of retirement, of or near, I should say, retirement age. People are starting to realize that maybe they don't need their IRAs or 401ks or whatever stuck in the stock market. Maybe they should be looking at physical precious metals like gold and silver. Now, I am not a financial advisor, so I'm not going to give you advice. I'm just going to tell you who to talk to if you've already made up your mind and you think maybe I should consider it. Go to jdrgold.com, jdrgold.com, or call 800-200-4653. That's 800-200-GOLD. And check out what the folks over at Genesis Gold Group can do for you. They are a faith-driven precious metals company. They don't do the scams, the cheats, the tactics, such as offering free or bonus silver. It's never free, and it's not really a bonus. You're paying for it. They just tack it onto the price and then say, "Oh, look, here's free, here's bonus." No. It's they probably have a good role to play in government, at least the old government. I would imagine that Doge and Elon Musk would sniff out their scams. But if you want to deal with a direct and honest company to do a tax-free rollover or transfer of your IRA, go to jdrgold.com, jdrgold.com. You'll receive a free definitive wealth protection kit. Plus, you will be contacted by my good friends at Genesis Gold Group. President Trump halts all Ukrainian aid, at least temporarily. Lord willing, this will extend and mark the official end of this con, this scam, this money laundering scheme of U.S. taxpayer dollars to not just Ukraine, but to the various people, entities, and even entire countries that are participating in this theft, because that's really what it is. It's them stealing from us. It's not like, oh my gosh, we need to protect and help save the people of Ukraine. This isn't about that. This never has been about that. The poor Ukrainian people do need support, but not in the form of government aid going to government oligarchs in Ukraine, the most corrupt nation in the Western world, maybe the most corrupt nation in all of the world. We don't know for sure, but we do know they are definitely corrupt. We do know that our money is being wasted and that is being distributed, not just our money, by the way, also our aid, our military equipment is being sold off to cartels, according to Tucker Carlson. So, yeah, this has been a really bad deal for the United States of America, and at least on the short term, it's coming to an end, according to an article over at The Right Scoop. It's just being reported by Bloomberg that all military aid to Ukraine has been halted by President Trump after Zelensky's comments today and his comments the other day in the Oval Office. The suspension of aid isn't permanent, but Trump wants to see Zelensky change his tune, especially as it pertains to peace. He said that peace isn't going to come very quickly. Trump disagrees, and this is the result. Here's what they reported, they being Bloomberg. President Donald Trump ordered a pause to all military aid to Ukraine, turning up the heat on Volodymyr Zelensky just days after an Oval Office blow-up with the Ukrainian president left the support of his country's most important ally in doubt. The U.S. is pausing all military aid to Ukraine until Trump determines the country's leaders demonstrate a good faith commitment to peace, according to a senior Defense Department official who asked not to be identified, discussing private deliberations. We got a leaker, but I would say that in this case, the leaker is probably somebody sent by the administration. The official said all U.S. military equipment not currently in Ukraine would be paused, including weapons in transit on aircraft and ships or waiting in transit areas in Poland. Zelensky is really treading on thin ice here and needs to backtrack quickly. This war has gone on for too long, and it's time to move toward peace. He claims he wants peace, but it sounds like it must be on his terms or no peace at all. That's a recipe for disaster. Now, let's be crystal clear about one thing. Well, we'll probably get to other things, and we'll be equally crystal clear, but this one is the important one. Volodymyr Zelensky does not want peace. Volodymyr Zelensky wants perpetual war. Volodymyr Zelensky's handlers want World War III. I guess that was three things. So, but these are statements of fact that you can argue against if you'd like, but you'd be wrong. Okay, the notion that Volodymyr Zelensky wants peace, if he wanted peace, there would already be peace. He has had multiple pathways to peace. As a matter of fact, he even said the other day, was about 2 or 3 weeks ago, when President Trump was talking to Vladimir Putin from Russia, Zelensky came out and he declared that there would be no peace deal unless he's involved. This is the degree of narcissism that this man has. If he were interested in peace, he would accept peace any way that it could come. If he was really caring for his people, the people that elected him, then he would accept any form of peace. He would welcome it graciously. He wouldn't be demanding that his name be attached to it. He wouldn't be declaring that he must be at the center of negotiations or there could be no peace. That is tyrannical. It's oppressive. It's ugly. And before people start saying, well, but he represents the people of Ukraine, does he really? I would argue that he does not represent their interests, has not represented their interests, and will not represent their interests. And they knew this. Let's be clear about something, because a lot of times, especially in legacy media, they'll throw out the statistic that shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine, the Vladimir Zelensky's approval rating was at 90%. And they're like, President Trump could never be at 90%. And the people of Ukraine love Zelensky. even though now his approval rating has dropped about 40 points since then. But they ignore that. Oh, but he's still over 50%. He's right there. He's still, he's still about a majority like him. Here's the reality of the people of Ukraine and their opinion of Vladimir Zelensky. Before the invasion, before his approval rating between the election in 2019 and the invasion, his approval rating plummeted. Why? Because the people of Ukraine hated him. And when I say hated him, they realized that they had been conned into electing someone who didn't care about them, who wasn't interested in advancing Ukraine's prosperity, wasn't interested in advancing Ukraine's freedom, and definitely wasn't interested in helping Ukraine to heal, to unify. He wanted the people, the Russian favored, or the people in Ukraine that would prefer to be Russian, okay? He wanted them to be basically subjects. He wouldn't let them leave. He wouldn't let them engage. He didn't even want them to speak Russian. He has oppressed his own people and was oppressing his own people before the invasion. This is why his approval rating dropped down to as low as 25%. And even the very best polls prior to the invasion showed that he was at 37% approval rating. Now, to put that in perspective for us Americans, so that we can understand how bad that is, following Joe Biden's disastrous debate with President Trump, the debate that ended up getting him, his own party to turn against him, okay, to demand that he not run. They all were so horrified to learn what most of us have known since even before his 2020 quote unquote victory, that he is demented. He's losing his mind. He has lost his mental acuity. And even then, after that debate, his approval rating was about 37.5. So Vladimir Zelensky, before the invasion, had made the people of Ukraine so angry that they disliked him more than the American people disliked Joe Biden following the Trump debate. Let's keep that in mind when you hear about how the people of Ukraine love him. You say, well, but how did he jump up to 90%? That's human nature, okay? That's how humans work. We might be opposed to something, but when there's a unifying event, such as an invasion by another country, the people rally around and unify against the common enemy. They might not have liked Zelensky before, but he's the guy that's going to try to stop Vladimir Putin, so they have to like him, even if they don't really like him. But they have to approve of him. They have to rally around him. That's how we work as humans, okay? When there is a common enemy, we might not like the guy that's on our side, but we have to approve of him, at least temporarily. If there were elections tomorrow, and if a viable alternative to Zelensky was offered up, I would say with a 99% certainty that his opponent would win. The reason I say it's 99% and not 100% is because, again, we're talking about Ukraine that is more corrupt than Philadelphia. Okay? It's more corrupt than you take the places in America that have the most voter fraud, the most corruption of officials, places like Chicago, places like Detroit, places like Philadelphia, they don't even come close to the corruption level in Ukraine. So it's definitely possible, a 1% chance, but I would say that it'd be such a landslide that, too big to rig sort of thing, right? I think that he would still lose even in corrupt Ukraine at about a 99% chance. But again, we don't know how far they would go to try to keep Zelensky in power, especially considering that he is a puppet of the globalist elite cabal. Okay, he's their point man. He's their face. He's the one who can help them to achieve their ultimate goal, which is to start World War III against Russia and China, for that matter. So, kudos to President Trump. Kudos to to our military. Kudos to the entire Trump administration for putting this aid, this money laundering scheme on hold for now. Will it be permanent? Probably not. There's probably going to be some sort of deal made in the near future that turns on the aid, and that I will be opposed to that. I will be regretful of it, but I'm also realistic about what is most likely to happen. But then again, you never know. President Trump continues to surprise us pretty much every day. Hopefully, Lord willing, he's got a big surprise for us coming soon. He's going to say, we're out of NATO and Ukraine is on their own. And if that happens, praise God for that. I'll feel bad for the people of Ukraine. I'll feel bad for the British and French soldiers that are sent into harm's way. I'll feel bad for the Russians, who many of them whom they don't want to invade. They don't want to participate in this, but they're forced to. There's a lot of bad things happening in Europe. I can be empathetic to that. But my concern is America. And as far as I'm concerned, whatever's happening in Ukraine, whatever's happening in Europe, whatever's happening in Russia, it is not our concern. All right, I've got two segments from this morning that I'm going to play. I play them back to back. That way, if you already watched this morning's show, you can take, it looks like it's about 20 minutes or so. You can either rewatch them, nothing wrong with that, or you can not and go hang out and come back, and we'll talk about some other stories after those. But again, for those who missed the beginning, we did run a show this morning. It was a great show. I loved it, and there were a couple of segments in there that I want to get full exposure to the entirety of my audience, and unfortunately, the morning show, it did not get a good bulk of viewers that I would have liked. So we're going to replay two of those segments back to back. That way, you can go grab a coffee or whatever. Go grab a couple of beers, as they say. I will admit, that was pretty funny. People were saying it was like the funniest thing. And for those who don't know the reference, I'm referring to Shane Gillis, who, I don't watch Saturday Night Live, but I did watch. He did a clip, a spoof on a called A Couple of Beers. It was funny. Okay, it wasn't great, but a lot of people say, "Oh, it's the funniest thing we've seen on Saturday Night Live in a long time." It was fine. Anyway, yeah, you can go grab a coffee, grab a couple of beers, grab whatever you need, or just sit here and watch these. And afterwards, I'll be back, and we'll talk about more stuff. Democrats would embrace Doge if they weren't so terrified of being busted by it. And we should go ahead and just call it the uniparty swamp. It's not just the Democrats. There are plenty of Republicans who are also terrified of Doge. They just don't have the luxury of being able to speak out against it, because then it would give away their stance. And I say that, but there are actually some Republicans who are coming around and saying, "Oh, Elon's cutting too much. Elon's going too far." They're being a little bit more quiet about it, because they realize that the vast majority of Republicans are in favor of these massive cuts. But here's the thing. A whole bunch of Democrats are in favor of it as well, especially when you don't frame it from the perspective. If you don't mention Elon Musk and you don't mention Donald Trump, and you just ask them the flat out questions, do you think that our government is run inefficiently? Do you think that there should be major cuts in what the government does? Vast majority of them would say yes. It's only when you start throwing in, well, President Trump is, yeah, and then you start, and also Elon Musk, and it's, that's when Democrat voters really start to cringe. They fall back to their default setting of orange man bad and rich billionaire space dude bad, whatever. Alex Karp, speaking of brilliant dudes, Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, is I would say he's one of my favorite transitioning Democrats. There's a lot of them, obviously. A lot of them out there who have been Democrats, perhaps even their entire lives, who are now starting to at least become independent, if not full-blown Republican. And we can, of course, thank President Trump for a good chunk of that. But we can also thank the Democrats, because they have, over the last 4.5 years, have thoroughly exposed themselves for their true allegiance. And that allegiance, of course, is not to the United States of America, to the Constitution, or to the American people. But one would think that based upon the popularity of Doge, because we're looking at some polls say like 73%, and those are the low-end polls. Other polls are showing much higher appreciation and acceptance and just Americans cheering for these cuts. So you'd think that they would see the writing on the wall. And you'd think that they would come around, perhaps, and maybe start saying, hey, you know what? We want to be part of the conversation. But they're not. And Alex Karp was sort of confused by this. Watch.
90% of the country's like, get rid of that fraud, waste, and abuse. And I just view this as yet another example of the progressive left boxing themselves into a suicide dance.
Standard operating procedure, and really for both parties, is to oppose whatever the other party's doing, especially if you don't have any power, such as the Democrats right now, with the Republicans having majorities in the House, the Senate, and control of the White House. It feels like they have to just lash out. That's what they generally do, just as, to be fair, Republicans do the same thing. At the beginning of every Democrat term, first 2 years of Obama, they were lashing out. First 2 years of Biden, they were lashing out because they didn't have any power, just as the Democrats have no legislative or executive power as of right now. With that said, this is a different situation. Because of the immense popularity of Doge, it would behoove Democrats to go to Elon Musk and say, hey, we want to be part of this. You know, we don't agree with your boss, and we don't agree with all of the things that you're doing, but we know that you can do good, so we want to talk. We want to be part of this. And you know what he would do? He would say, come on in. Let's talk. You know, explain to me why we shouldn't cut this or why we should cut that. And he would listen. But they don't want to do that. They don't want to talk to him at all. Here's Alex Karp again explaining it.
What the progressive left should be doing is saying, okay, Elon, you're clearly the most qualified person in the world to do something like this. We want to dialogue with you about how you're doing and what are you doing. I don't believe that's actually what happened.
It's definitely not what has happened. I hope it does. Look, I am not a fan of the Democrat Party, but I think that they could actually, if they tried, they could actually contribute to this. Now, I could always make a joke about how they know where more of the bodies are buried, and that would help Elon Musk to do his job better. But I won't make that joke. That would be wrong. But what's not wrong is the fact that we don't trust them. And it's not just the Democrats. We don't trust Washington, D.C. And it's not just the politicians that we don't trust. We don't trust the bureaucrats. And it's not even just the bureaucrats that we don't trust or the politicians. We don't trust the institutions themselves. And as Alex Karp noted, once again, that's a big problem.
What is the biggest problem in this society? Biggest problem in this society from my perspective is legitimacy of our institutions. Why aren't they legitimate?
He is absolutely correct. It is a lack of trust in institutions that's really making it difficult for us as a nation to advance. And I have a special guest with me, but he's going to depart here any second as soon as we play this next clip. As a matter of fact, let's just go ahead and play the next clip.
The right response is, we want this to happen, we want to happen, we want to be involved in the dialogue. The real response is, it feels like the people criticizing Elon don't want it to happen. And this is going to destroy those people.
So they do have an easy button, they being the uniparty swamp, or really anyone on Capitol Hill. Any incumbent on Capitol Hill has an easy button to re-election. It's called hopping on the Doge train. If you're a Republican, you hop on the Doge train and you say, I'm advancing President Trump's agenda, and you will be reelected. If you're a Democrat, you hop on the Doge train and you say, I'm embracing bipartisanship for the sake of cutting waste and saving my constituents money and saving them heartache and trying to get rid of government bloat. It's a winning ticket. It's the easy button. Hop on Doge, help Doge be successful, get them in, get them out, and then we move forward with a much, much, much more efficient government, and everybody is happier. except that there's one piece of information that Alex Karp may not be aware of. That piece of information is the fact that what Doge is uncovering is more than just waste. Doge is uncovering and will continue to uncover corruption, fraud, abuse. In other words, members of the Uniparty swamp, not just on Capitol Hill, but also bureaucrats, and not just in D.C., nationwide, they risk, as a result of Doge's efforts, they risk getting busted. Busted for their sins, in many cases, busted for their crimes. There are people that if Doge continues to dig as it's digging and does even more, there are people in D.C. and across the country who will go to jail because they will be exposed. What Doge is doing, it's cutting waste. That's great. It's making government more efficient. That's great. But the reason there's this unhinged, absolutely unhinged, and unpopular dissent against Doge is because these people feel that Doge is an existential threat, not to America, but to their cons, their scams, their money laundering, their influence peddling, everything. The things that they've done in office as a politician or a bureaucrat, they realize that if they were to get busted, that the best case scenario is that they're booted out of politics. That's the best thing that could happen to them. The worst thing that could happen to them is that they could go to jail. This is why they're fighting so hard. It's not because they fear an efficient government. It's not because they're so scared. Oh my gosh, think of all of the transgender Indians that aren't going to be able to have their surgeries because Elon Musk cut funding. That's not what they're scared of. They're scared on behalf of their own hides. They're scared on behalf of the deep state. They're scared on behalf of their version of the United States of America, which is the United States of America under the globalist elite cabal. They've been building this foundation for a long time. Doge threatens to tear that foundation down. And that's why they're terrified. That's why they are unhinged. That's why they are literally losing sleep over this. They might not like Donald Trump, but they're terrified of Elon Musk. If there's one thing that people who are brand new to prepping often forget, it's the long-term storage meds. I think a lot of times people either forget them or they don't realize that they can acquire medications that can be held for an extended period of time. My good friends over at Jace Medical, well, they've got you covered, whether it's for chronic meds for illnesses that you or your family members have, whether it's antibiotics, just being ready for whatever is going to happen in the world. These are things that you should have available to you if you're going to be preparing for self-reliance in the long haul. Go to jdrucker.com/meds, jdrucker.com/meds. Use promo code RUCKER10, the number 10, RUCKER10 at checkout, and you get a nice discount on top of that. jdrucker.com/meds. Leaving NATO would actually be an economic boom for the United States of America. It's a topic that really nobody's discussing. Sure, we talk about the fact that NATO is a waste of money, that we spend so much money giving to NATO. We cover the lion's share as a nation. We cover the expenses for an organization, an alliance that really doesn't do much for us, if anything at all. I would say probably nothing. But hey, that's me. But no, it's far bigger than that. Leaving NATO would actually benefit our economy in many ways. It would actually drive more money into our nation as a result of us leaving NATO. And I'll explain why here in a second. But let's cover a couple of there's a few 800-pound gorillas roaming around the room right now that we should probably cover. Number one, should NATO even exist? I would argue no. I would say that NATO's usefulness has long been gone, just as the Soviet Union has been gone for a very long time. That was the whole notion. The idea of forming NATO was to stop the expansion of the Soviet Union. Well, the Soviet Union is gone, and even the remnant of the Soviet Union, Russia, is not in expansionist mindset. People say, but look, they invaded Ukraine. That's why we need NATO. And I would argue that if NATO didn't exist, that Russia wouldn't have invaded Ukraine in the first place. Now, obviously, we can't say that definitively because we can't go back in time and make NATO disappear and see if Russia invades anyway. But one of the reasons, for sure, this is indisputable, one of the reasons that Russia did invade Ukraine in the first place was because Ukraine was trying aggressively to join NATO, despite promises way back in 1994, was it? When it was declared, oh, we will not expand NATO eastward, and then boom, we started expanding NATO eastward. Ukraine would be the crown jewel of NATO, of course, and Russia is very concerned about that. Imagine if there were Russian nukes in, for example, Cuba. You think that if Russia tried to put nukes in Cuba, that we might respond, I don't know, negatively towards that? I think that we would. And so the idea of expanding NATO to include Ukraine, that was something that Russia definitely did not want. Then there are recent actions. Of course, we had what happened with Volodymyr Zelensky, which prompted some pretty silly things. This article comes to us from Breitbart. Elizabeth Wiebel over there. Mike Lee calls for exit from NATO after Norwegian fuel company stops refueling U.S. military ships. Those dastardly bad guys. Europe doesn't love us, Senator Mike Lee wrote on a post on X. Let's leave NATO. Pretty simple. Lee's post came in response to another post that noted that the company, Haltbach Bunkers, had stopped refueling the U.S. Navy ships and was reportedly urging other European countries to follow suit. In a statement issued by Haltbach Bunkers, the company explained that it would no longer supply American military ships in Norway or those docking in Norwegian ports, adding that the U.S. was excluded based on their behavior towards Ukraine, according to the Daily Mail. Now, nothing is mentioned, of course, in there that Volodymyr Zelensky came to the Oval Office. He disrespected the Oval Office. He insulted the president and the vice president. He insulted the intelligence of the American people with his incessant push for security guarantees. He was supposed to be coming there to sign an economic agreement regarding rare earth minerals. But no, he wanted to make it about a security guarantee. He wanted American troops in Ukraine. He wanted human shields. And if the result of that would have been World War III, that's fine, as long as he and his oligarchs continue to get more money and more power and retain and no elections and all that stuff. This was never about a mineral agreement, at least as far as Zelensky was concerned. But sure, Norway can blame us for the debacle that Volodymyr Zelensky initiated upon us. Now, he's not the only one, by the way. Okay? He being Mike Lee. Sorry, not Zelensky. Mike Lee is not the only one that's calling for this. There was Gunter Eagleman. I've got to figure out who Gunter Eagleman is because his X account is very, very impressive, very enticing, and yet I don't know who this guy is. I should probably look him up. Let's see what is. Says David J. Freeman, political commentator, America First MAGA, Trump supporter, unfiltered, 1.3 million followers. All right, David J. Freeman. Now I know who he is. Great. He says it's time to leave NATO and the UN. And he's not the only one because Elon Musk reposted his post saying, I agree. So there seems to be this growing sentiment to leave NATO. So we've already talked about how leaving NATO would cut off a resource drain. It's not just the money that we send to support NATO. It's also the equipment, the people, the participation in NATO by our military that is costing taxpayer dollars. But what if, let's say we were to leave NATO. What would happen? There's one thing that's already being discussed right now that would be accelerated if we were to leave NATO, and that is a European army. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, we don't want Europe to have an army. I don't know why. If Europe wants to be a union, which they clearly do, If they don't want to have individual sovereign nations, which they clearly don't, and if those sovereign nations no longer want to be, sovereign, well, so be it. Then they should have an army for the European Union. I have no problem with that. And here's the thing. If that were the case, if we were to leave NATO and they were to form a European Union army, well, guess where they would probably want to buy weapons from? You guessed it, folks. At least a good chunk of it would come from the United States of America. Now, might be like, oh my gosh, are you supporting the military-industrial complex? By no means. Look, the military-industrial complex is going to create weapons and build all sorts of guns and ships and jets and everything, okay? That's going to happen no matter what. We might as well make money off it and sell it to people that are friendly to us. You might say, but Europe won't be friendly to us anymore if we were to leave NATO. I would disagree about that as well. Okay, I mean, here's the thing. We can say all we want about whether Europe likes us or not. They don't like us. They never have. But they do need us. And they always will. Well, maybe not always, but at least for the foreseeable future, there's going to be a need for the United States of America to support NATO. Now, instead of us support Europe. Now, instead of us supporting Europe through NATO, what if we supported them through transactional arrangements regarding our military prowess? Why don't we just sell them weapons that they need? It would be an economic boom, more jobs, more this, more money flowing in, all of that good stuff. Then there is reason number two, or I guess you could say economic boom number two that would come from this. There is, right now, we pay NATO to defend other nations. That's essentially what it's for. We pay, for whatever reason, for them to allow us to defend them. It's like the stupidest thing ever. It's a con, really, against the American taxpayer. But what if instead of us paying them, what if, crazy thought here, but what if other nations were to pay us? Now, I know I don't want to get into being the police of the of the world. We're trying to pull away from that. We're trying to get to an America first stance, right? Okay, great. But what if, because here's the thing, if, for example, if our friends in England were invaded by Russia, NATO or no NATO, let's say we're out of NATO, Russia invades England, okay? Are we going to be like, now Russia, we're going to send you a harshly worded letter? No, we would go and we would defend them. A lot of people would be against it, of course, because a lot of people are against us defending anybody. And I agree to some extent. We do have true friends. And despite the radical leftism that has engulfed the British government, despite the radical Islam that is invading England right now, especially London, despite all these things, we're still friends and allies with England. And yes, we would, treaty or no treaty, we would defend them. So why not? If we're going to be defending, in theory, all of these nations, why wouldn't we want them to pay us for that defense? I know it sounds crazy, okay? People don't talk about it very much, but if we're going to get into some sort of arrangement, some sort of agreement with whichever country we choose, it's not like anybody can pay and we're in. It's not a pay-to-play scenario here. But what if the ones that do want us to help, ones that we want to help, okay, what if they're paying us? And they could be paying us. It's not just like, oh, here's billions of dollars in protection money. It's not quite like that. It would be more along the lines of paying us in the form of, for example, favorable trade agreements, or flat out paying us money, or sending us gold to refill Fort Knox, or whatever. I mean, something. Let's just get something out of it. We have the best military in the world. Now, I know we suffered through 4 years of transgender, militarist, wokeness, whatever, but we got Pete Hegseth in there now. The military is going to be strengthened, bolstered, reinforced. So, hey, somebody wants us to protect them, so be it. They just need to pay us. That's all. And then, last but not least, as far as the economic boom of leaving NATO, is the idea that without NATO, we can be more engaged with other nations. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but that does include Russia. People want to say Russia's the bad guy. I don't disagree. I'm one of those, more and more people seem to love Vladimir Putin. I don't love Vladimir Putin, okay? Do I like him better than Vladimir Zelensky? Yeah, I do, obviously. But but I don't trust him. He has always been Russia first long before we had anybody who was America first, okay? He will screw over anybody, any nation, anybody to help Russia. And that does include us. He would hurt Americans if it meant that he would be helping Russia. That's in his nature. And I don't like it because that obviously makes him potentially adversarial to us in certain situations, but I don't disagree with it wholeheartedly. I mean, I think the nations should be sovereign and they should put their own nations above everybody else. And if every nation did that, then I think we'd have fewer problems in the world, but that's a whole other discussion for a whole other day. After the debacle of a meeting with Vladimir Zelensky, Vladimir Putin went out there and basically said, look, we got a ton of rare earth minerals ourselves. Why don't we work on it? We'll even let, companies come in here, American companies can come in and invest and start getting it themselves. It doesn't even just have to be an agreement with Trump. It could just, we could work with Exxon or somebody. I don't know who he'd work with. But there are potentials for dramatic and very lucrative economic deals that could be made if we were not part of an adversarial alliance such as NATO. Look, I think that NATO was absolutely positively necessary for many decades, for probably 5 decades, okay? 5 decades, NATO was beneficial. One could argue that NATO is the reason that we were able to win the Cold War. NATO is the reason part of the reason that the Soviet Union no longer exists. I'm not saying that NATO has always been bad, but it has outlived its usefulness, and it has become more of a detriment than a positive for the United States of America. So I wholeheartedly agree with a lot of the growing chorus of people who are saying we should leave. And I also want to throw out there the premise of this entire segment. I stand by it. If we were to leave NATO altogether, then the economic benefits for the United States of America will be huge. Zelensky says he would just get elected again if a fresh Ukraine election were to happen. He said, replacing me won't be easy. All right. Challenge accepted. I mean, if he really wants to say that he's that popular that he could survive an election, a democratic election by the people without massive widespread voter fraud, then I say go for it. That would demonstrate to me, hey, you know what? The people trust him. They like him. They trust him. They believe in him. Let him do his thing. I am all in favor of nations being sovereign and the people of those nations determining the path of their country and who their leaders are going to be. So I say go for it. Let's do this. Article comes from Breitbart. Oliver J.J. Lane over there. Ukraine's lack of elections has been cited as a concern by some Western figures as President Donald Trump tries to bring peace to the region. But Vladimir Zelensky insists he's so popular, you'd have to ban him from office to prevent him from returning to power. Again, challenge accepted, dude. Prove us wrong. Ukraine's President Zelensky held court at London's Stansted Airport on Sunday, the latest stop in his version of intense shuttle diplomacy. And among comments made, he rejected calls for him to call fresh elections in his country to refresh its democratic legitimacy. Calling fresh elections is pointless because, he claimed, Zelensky is so popular in Ukraine, he'd simply be reelected again anyway. Given his level of support, Zelensky said, per a translation provided at the conference, that to replace me will not be easy because to guarantee a new president, you'd have to block him from appearing on the ballot. We don't have to block him. Hey, a fair and square new election, brother. Let's do it. He said, it is not enough to simply hold elections. You need to prevent me from running. So whether elections are held or not, the West will ultimately still have to negotiate with him. That's what he claims. The Ukrainian government has previously taken this line when defending itself from accusations that, given its national elections for the presidency and parliament are now a year overdue, it's backsliding on democracy. Indeed, Kiev has insisted its own research shows Zelensky remains extremely popular with a high approval rating at home. Now, let's be clear. The research that they're talking about was in part funded by USAID. As noted, however, it is hard to accept these assertions at face value, given Ukraine is a country under martial law. Criticizing its president can invite punishment. Millions of its citizens are abroad as refugees or live under Russian occupation, and political parties with anti-war or pro-Russian views have been banned, with some opposition politicians even killed in targeted assassinations in the course of the war. Don't forget, this is the guy that they're claiming, they being the globalist elite cabal, U.S. legacy media, Democrats, the uniparty swamp, they claim this guy is like the champion of democracy. Sure, you can be the champion of democracy, and you can be very popular, at least on paper, when you're literally killing your opposition. These are arguments made for why holding elections in wartime is difficult, and the United Kingdom, for instance, was quick to tell Ukraine it supported their decision to suspend democracy in wartime against President Trump's comments, but critics say it is perfectly possible if the Ukrainian government actually wanted to try. Elections with large eligible-to-vote diasporas abroad and even elections during wartime with millions of men under arms have been successfully conducted by democracies in the past. Elections suspended or not, Zelensky accused other countries, in other words, the United States, of being undemocratic by trying to tell the Ukrainian people who their president should be. Now, I agree with that. Hey, look, I think we should stop calling for him to step down. That's none of our concerns, not our business. Sovereign nation does sovereign things. I'm all for that. But again, we are talking about a nation that refuses to have elections. He continued, honestly, it looks like the citizens of other countries are telling Ukrainians which president they should have, especially when these people occupy official posts. It seems to be a bit undemocratic, unconstructive. We are talking about values, and it definitely doesn't look democratic. And again, I hate agreeing with him, at least in part. I agree with the overarching sentiment, not necessarily the way that he's putting it. But with that said, it is very, very true that he is unpopular. As I noted in a segment before, his popularity is manufactured. Okay, his real popularity prior to the invasion was at rock bottom. Okay, it was below Joe Biden's post-dementia debate approval rating. They didn't like him. They wanted him out. The best thing that's happened to Vladimir Zelensky's political career is this war. This has propelled him into, obviously, the international spotlight and has solidified his position in his own nation. When Trump says that he is a dictator, that is true. He really, truly is. Now, whether or not that's his fault, we could argue that he's only a dictator by necessity because they are in the midst of a war. I'm not going to judge him based upon those actions. I will judge him based upon the fact that, yes, he does suppress any opposition at all. And that's not democratic. When he wants to talk about us being undemocratic because we're saying, hey, you should step down. Okay, I agree, but then he is definitely being undemocratic when he says, if you oppose me, if you oppose my doctrines, if you oppose my strategies, then you will be removed from power if you are an official, and that has happened on multiple occasions. Or if you're just out there, if you're an opposition leader, you're out there holding rallies against me, well, we're going to stop that because we need a unified Ukraine. It's disgusting how much he has gotten away with. But he's going to continue to get away with it, at least in the eyes of the international community, because his puppet masters amongst the globalist elite cabal want him to be propped up as the poster child for their version of democracy. And it really is their version of democracy. That's not like, oh, well, because of the war, we're going to give him some leeway. No, what he represents is what they want worldwide. Okay? a democracy that doesn't actually have elections, a democracy where opposition is suppressed, a democracy where those who could challenge the powers, they are eliminated in some form or fashion, up to and including death. So they can keep their version of democracy. I'll keep our constitutional republic. And I will fight tooth and nail to prevent their version of democracy of ever coming to the United States of America. Anybody who's watched my show throughout the Biden-Harris regime, you're probably very well aware that I've been bullish about physical precious metals throughout. And I remain bullish, to be clear, even though obviously we're in a completely different and far better era under President Trump. I still remain bullish about gold and silver, and you can see in the spikes in prices recently of gold and silver that I have good reason to be. But here's the thing. When it came to cryptocurrencies under the Biden-Harris regime, I was very skeptical, always have been, because I just didn't trust them. I did not trust that a government that prides itself on authoritarianism would be able to handle a decentralized currency such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the like. Well, now we are in the Trump era, and all of a sudden I'm bullish. Bullish about crypto and the potential future there, especially as it pertains to one's retirement. Now, I think everybody and their dog is aware that they can back their retirement with physical precious metals such as gold and silver. I've been promoting that for a while. You can always go to jdrgold.com for that. But the addition, now that we are in 2025 and things seem to be very much on their way in the direction that we expected them to go economically under President Trump, all of a sudden, I am now bullish about protecting and potentially growing your retirement accounts through cryptocurrencies. These, like I said, it took me a while. I was skeptical because I thought, oh, they're gonna come out with a central bank digital currency. Well, Trump outlawed those. They're going to come out with de-dollarization and the BRICS. Well, Trump's taking care of that. All right, so what do we have left? Now we have an upside for cryptocurrencies, and I am very, very pleased to recommend going to jdrucker.com/crypto, jdrucker.com/crypto, and find out if a crypto-backed IRA is right for you. Head of the New York FBI field office resigns after DOJ says office hid the Epstein documents. Finally, we're on to some non-Zelensky news, and this is news that surrounds Pam Bondi. And anybody who watched my show this morning, well, you know that I'm not a fan right now. Now, unlike some out there, I am willing to give her a second chance. I'm willing to give her a mulligan just because we're 6 weeks in. Okay, she's been confirmed for, 3-4 weeks now? I don't even know if it's been that long, but she hasn't been in the job for very long. There's a chance that she just didn't realize. She just didn't understand, okay? So I'm not, but I will tell you, she's on thin ice as far as I'm concerned, okay? It's not the fact that she hasn't released the Epstein documents yet. It's the fact that she seemed to be either unaware or covering it up. One or the other. And neither is good, but we're going to give her the benefit, or at least I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, maybe she was just ignorant. Maybe she was just unaware of the duplicity within the Federal Bureau of Investigations, the corruption within the Department of Justice. Maybe she just didn't realize what she was getting herself into, and when she was given, quote unquote, all the Epstein files, that she took it at face value and then didn't really pursue it much until now, when it's not too late, but it's later than it should be. We should already have them, okay? This news about the head of the Southern District of New York FBI field office, this shouldn't be news, okay? In other words, this should have already happened. She should have come in and then very quickly become aware, because it was President Trump who decreed that the Epstein files would be released. Unredacted, for the most part, other than, of course, victim information. I get that. But everything else, unredacted. Every name, every bad guy, even people that aren't necessarily bad guys, but who were associated with Epstein. And that does include, to be fair, that includes President Trump. Now, we know that President Trump was not involved in any of the crazy stuff that Jeffrey Epstein did, or else that would definitely have already been used against him. 100% certainty that would have been used against him to prevent him from getting back into office. The fact that he didn't engage in any of that stuff, and that over throughout the years he has gone against Epstein. Okay, he banned Epstein from his country club because of some incident with a member's daughter. Go figure. He had made a quote one time. It's like somebody asked him about Jeffrey Epstein. He's like, "Yeah, I don't know. He likes him young or something to that effect." Like he was clearly he did not like Jeffrey Epstein. He did not approve of Jeffrey Epstein as a businessman. And now that he's president, he's willing to expose Jeffrey Epstein and his clients. Pam Bondi should fulfill that. But apparently, like I said, we're going to go with the whole idea. I'm not going to call it a cover-up yet. We're going to go with incompetence, and hopefully temporary incompetence. I want her to succeed. I want her to take this, this little bloody nose that she's taking, because it has looked really bad for her. I want her to take this little bloody nose, wipe her face off, and get right back in there, and now let's get it done. Okay. But with that said, I'm also not happy about this guy getting fired, because we are talking about a massive cover-up against the executive order of the President of the United States, against the decree by the Attorney General of the United States, against the wishes of the people of the United States. He has broken the law, and therefore, in my humble opinion, should be investigated, charged, arrested, prosecuted, convicted, and jailed. But we'll see. Let's get to this article, though. This is over at the Post Millennial by Roberto Walkerell Cruz. The Federal Bureau of Investigation's top official in New York was forced to resign on Monday, stating he was not given any reason for the decision. I don't know. Why did I get fired? Maybe because I'm covering up for very powerful people and a allegedly dead pedophile. The resignation comes after the Department of Justice accused his office of hiding documents related to the Jeffrey Epstein case last week. James Dennehy, a Marine Corps veteran who joined the FBI following the September 11 attacks, informed colleagues at the agency's New York field office of his departure in a resignation letter. And here's what he said to them. Late Friday, I was informed that I needed to put my retirement papers in today, which I just did. I was not given a reason for this decision. In other words, he's trying to pretend like he doesn't know. In the letter, he expressed regret over the sudden nature of his resignation and praised his coworkers as an office of professionals who will always do the right thing for the right reasons. Wrong. Lies. And maybe not lies. Lies, that might be a little bit too harsh. Let's be clear about a couple of things. Number one, I do believe that there are people who do things that we would consider to be illegal or at least immoral, sometimes even evil, and that in their hearts they don't realize it. Maybe he thinks that he's saving America by keeping information hidden. Maybe he thinks that, we can't send Bill Clinton to jail. We can't ruin our relationship with Great Britain by sending half of the royal family to jail. This is important information, and we can't. It's not going to do anything. Jeffrey Epstein's dead anyway. What's it? It's just. Point is that there's a chance that a lot of these people really don't know that what they're doing is evil and wrong and possibly illegal. In this guy's case, I would say, no, I'm going to assume that he is bought and paid for or blackmailed, or in some way he is working on behalf of the global elite cabal willingly to some extent, but that he is doing bad things for bad reasons. Anyway, his exit is the latest in a series of departures from the FBI since the Trump administration took over the White House. Dennehy had previously clashed with acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove. Last month, he sent an email to the FBI staff voicing support for officials who had been removed from investigations related to January 6th Capitol riot. At that point, his email said, "Today we find ourselves in the middle of a battle of our own. As good people are being walked out of the FBI and others are being targeted because they did their jobs in accordance with the law and FBI policy." Wrong. Again. Okay. Anybody, if you, let me, sorry, I keep having to do these asides, but it's important. Any FBI agent who feels that the entrapment, the manufacturing of an insurrection, any FBI agent who feels that was somehow lawful or righteous or in accordance with the values of the United States of America, they don't deserve to be an FBI agent. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry at all. They don't deserve to be an FBI agent because they clearly have their moral compass askew. These were American patriots, are still, many of them still are American patriots, who were told, they were basically pushed, in essence, into a building to stage a fake insurrection to try to prevent Donald Trump from ever being in office again and to try to prevent American patriots from engaging in their constitutionally protected right to protest. You can't tell me that the FBI was acting in accordance with the law and FBI policy. No. And agents that were sent out to investigate these people while being pulled off of cases that were going after child sex traffickers, for example. Okay, if they thought, oh yeah, no, this is totally going after Granny who walked through a building, that's definitely more important than protecting the American people from this pedophile rapist over here. Okay, if that's their judgment, then no, I don't want them in the FBI or anywhere near law enforcement. There is a security guard position waiting for them somewhere, I assure you. Back to the article. The release of the Epstein files did not go as planned last week, to say the least, as instead of a press conference summarizing key findings, the White House distributed binders to select influencers and independent media figures. And I really feel bad. Look, I know I was ripping on those influencers last week. I feel bad for them. They didn't know. They didn't do anything wrong. Okay, I might disagree with the way that they handle themselves sometimes, but it was wrong of me to go after them. They were handed a binder, and they thought, oh, transparency, President Trump Pam Bondi, yay, showing their binders to the cameras, and then they look through, and they're like, whoa, what the heck is this? This is nothing. I could have gotten more information literally on Google, but whatever. Anyway, these individuals were instructed not to promote the release and were unable to share the contents immediately due to an embargo, which is just dumb. As a result, much of the public and media spent the day speculating about the contents before the information was gradually posted online. The documents released had largely been made public in previous disclosures. It was nothing new. The rollout sparked criticism against those who received the binders, as well as the Attorney General's office and the FBI. The House Judiciary GOP posted a misleading link claiming to provide access to the files, which instead directed users to Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. They went Rickroll, and that didn't go very well. They took it down, but that was still idiotic. Whoever thought of that one, they were dumb. Attorney General Pam Bondi, who previously announced the release, later revealed that the FBI Southern District of New York had withheld thousands of documents despite her request for all Epstein-related materials. The letter from Bondi was addressed to Patel and said that she had, prior to his confirmation to that position, requested the full and complete files related to Jeffrey Epstein. She received 200 pages of flight logs, contacts, and victims' names and phone numbers. She told Patel that she had repeatedly questioned whether this was the full set of documents responsive to her request, and was repeatedly assured by the FBI that we had received the full set of documents. Now let's just stop right there. It doesn't take somebody with top secret clearance, top secret security clearance, to realize that 200 pages, that wasn't it. Okay? We all, most of us, witnessed what was taken from Epstein Island. We all know that after years, decades of investigations, that they have literal rooms full of evidence against Jeffrey Epstein and against many of his clients, if not all of his clients. They have videos. They have evidence against some of the most powerful people on the planet. So if she really, truly, legitimately thought that 200 pages of redacted text, that was all the FBI was able to accumulate in the decades that they were investigating Jeffrey Epstein, then she's gullible. And my mulligan that I'm allowing her, it's getting smaller and smaller, okay? I mean, look, benefit of the doubt, come on, pull it in, Rucker. I don't want to go through another confirmation. I don't want to give President Trump's very strong, otherwise, cabinet a black eye. But my gosh, Pam Bondi, really? It's like, you sure? Wait. We saw them carrying out like crates full of evidence. You're telling me that it all fits into this 200-page binder? It's like, yep, that's what we're telling you. Oh, okay. I guess, I guess so. The FBI has been so trustworthy over the years. Mulligan. She gets a mulligan. Just take it down a notch. All right. Let's finish off this story before I change my mind and start demanding that Pam Bondi resign immediately. Okay. She then revealed that on Wednesday she learned from a source that the FBI field office in New York was in possession of thousands of pages of documents related to the investigation and indictment of Epstein, and that the existence of these files was not disclosed to her, nor were they delivered. She demanded that Patel ensure the delivery of all those documents to her office by Friday morning, including all records, documents, audio, and video recordings and materials related to Jeffrey Epstein and his clients, regardless of how such information was obtained. Anyway, so the point is enough ripping on Pam Bondi. Here's a guy. What's his name? James Dennehy. He's gone. And I would say that I would remind us of two things. Number one, Joe Biden did not pardon him on his way out. And number two, if they do discover, and I think that they will, if they do discover that he and anyone else in the FBI, outside of the FBI, in Congress, I don't care where, anybody whose fingerprints are on these documents, who they can trace back and prove that they were withholding information from the Attorney General of the United States and by extension, the President of the United States, and by further extension, because of his executive order, the American people, anybody who was participating in covering this up, firing them is not enough. It will be up to Pam Bondi to use the fullest extent of the law to bring these people to justice. That there is no mulligan for. I demand it. Fun stuff, good stuff. We have a lot to cover. Tomorrow I'm going to be right in the middle, unfortunately, of the. We'll see. I might actually do it live. What time is it even? What time does President Trump speak tomorrow? Google President Trump addresses Congress. What time? Let's see. Speech to Congress. You'd think that it would just tell me the time. There we go. Let's see. It is tomorrow at 9 Eastern. Okay, good. So it should be over. Cool. So that's what we'll talk about tomorrow night. Be sure to tune back in at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. We are going to try to do another show in the morning, too. I can't tell you what time it's going to be because I don't know what time it's going to be yet because we're trying out different times. And I'll let smarter people figure out when to say. They'll just say, hey, go on air. And I'll be like, okay, let's do it. That's how I roll. I don't do the smart person stuff. I'm just the pretty face. I laugh because it's funny. All right, that's it. Be sure to subscribe if you have not already. Be sure to thumbs up if you have not already, or like or whatever, depending upon where you're watching. Lord willing, I will be back very soon with another episode. But in the meantime, you all stay strong, stay safe, and God bless.